This is Dormouse03 and I'm going to be talking some more E3 2012. In this video I'm going to be discussing the Konami, Ubisoft, and EA press conferences. So I'm going to start with Konami because it's pretty quick and simple. The only game really that they showed was Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, which is a stupid name. I'm going to go ahead and say that. I mean, I get it, they're sort of melding revenge and vengeance, and I'm sorry, it just sounds silly to me. The game itself, it looks like you'll like it if you like Ninja Gaiden. If you like Ninja Gaiden, you will like it. And that's really all there is to say. You're playing as Raiden, and it's not a stealth game, it's an action game, and looks like Ninja Gaiden. That's all there is. I mean, it looks like it might be a pretty decent action game, but I'm not super interested, so I'm gonna move on then from Konami's press conference, because really that's all there was. I think they mentioned their Zone of the Enders HD collection, which again I'm not interested in, and Metal Gear, and that's it. So moving on to EA, which felt like a lackluster conference too. Everything that they talked about was either a sequel or DLC, an add-on for games that already exist, and so they talked about some of their sports games, Madden, FIFA, UFC. Not interested in those, but they look like they have some neat innovation if you are a fan of their sports games. And then they talked about SimCity and SimCity Social, which is going to be a Facebook game, and then the SimCity is a PC game. And it's just a simulation. It's the same, you know, as SimCity has always been. It's a simulation game where you build a city and then you run it and try to keep your people alive through various disasters and whatnot. Again, not something I'm that interested in. It looks like a decent game if you're into those types of things. They had Need for Speed Most Wanted, which looks like another one of those sort of arcadey racing games. It's in the Need for Speed series. In my opinion, I mean, it didn't show that well. I was more interested in Forza Horizon, which it looks like a similar kind of thing. Just sort of an arcadey driving fast cars through roads. And I honestly was more interested in Need for Speed Hot Pursuit that they showed last year. So, I don't know. That's all there is really for me to say about that. They also had a couple of DLC package things. The first one is for Battlefield 3. They're announcing a service that's sort of EA's answer to the Call of Duty Elite memberships, and they're calling it Battlefield Premium. Basically, it's $50, and you get 5 pieces of DLC. The first one is the DLC that's already out, the Back to Karkland, or the Karkland missions, and then there will be 4 other ones. One of them is about tanks. It's like a tank warfare mode for multiplayer, and then there are 3 others. I can't exactly remember what they are. But they will be rolling out throughout the course of the year, so it sounds like if you're a Battlefield 3 fan, that's something that might be interesting for you. They also announced some content that's coming to the Old Republic, which seems like it's struggling. I played it for a month, and honestly, my computer wasn't really up to specs to be able to play it very well because I don't have a gaming PC, and so it just wasn't fun for me to play. Otherwise, I think it would be fun to play if you're into MMOs and if you're into BioWare type games. where you're, you know, making your character, making choices, choosing those dialogue options, etc. And if you're into Star Wars. So, I don't know, it didn't really hold my interest, but partly that was because of, you know, technical problems on my part. And I'm not the biggest MMO fan in the first place. But it sounds like they're struggling to keep their audience, and so they're announcing some new things that are coming to that, a new mission, some new playable characters, and the most exciting thing for me to see was a new squad mate, the HK-51 Assassin Droid, which is a character from KOTOR, and was one of my favorite characters from that game because he's kind of like the anti-R2-D2. You know, he calls you meatbag, and he's an evil droid, and who doesn't love an evil droid? So, that's kind of neat, but otherwise, again, I'm sort of not going to be playing that game, so I'm not super interested. And then the three sort of most interesting games of the conference were Medal of Honor, Warfighter, I think is the subtitle for that, but it's the new Medal of Honor, Crysis 3, and Dead Space 3. And so Medal of Honor, I mean, it looks good. It looks like another one of those, you know, war games, and trying to take a piece out of the Call of Duty pie, and I'm just not super interested in it. I mean, the graphics look good, the gameplay looks good. It looks better than the Medal of Honor that they released a couple years ago. It looks like it has some interesting settings. I think maybe it's in Somalia, I forget. But, again, it's not something that really lights a fire for me. Crysis 3 does look at least semi-interesting for me, just because I like the Crysis-type gameplay where you can spec out your suit to different, you know, styles of play. You can use the camo for stealth. You can upgrade it so that you can make more powerful attacks and stuff like that. And so Crysis 3, and it looks gorgeous as you should expect from a Crysis game, and so, you know, that one is at least moderately interesting to me. It looks, I guess, just like another Crysis. I haven't seen a whole lot that really differentiates it, though. And now on to the one that I was actually looking forward to seeing, and I do have a bit to talk about, is Dead Space 3. So, it's another Dead Space, and in this one, they are adding drop-in, drop-out co-op, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. From what I've heard the developers talk about, they say that they wanted to take that really sort of terrifying, streamlined single-player experience and really be able to apply that to co-op. I'm still not sure exactly how well that's going to work. The level that they showed was sort of a really action-heavy level where you've got this sort of grinder going, and Isaac and Carver, who is the co-op partner, were trying to kill necromorphs while avoiding this grinder thing and get out of the area that they were trapped in. And so it wasn't a lot of that survival horror feel. It just seemed more action. But according to the developers, it's not necessarily that. They say that they wanted to give you a variety of different feels, and so that there's parts that are down on this planet that you're going to, and I think that that is interesting, exploring a planet rather than being in space the entire time. I think that is an interesting direction, and opens up some opportunities for some different types of settings, and to learn more about the necromorphs and Unitology, the Church of Unitology, and sort of the story and the markers, and find out what's going on. So it seems like there is potential for that to be cool, and they do say that, you know, there is still sort of things where you're on these ships, this flotilla, that's above the planet in space. So there are space sections, there are zero-G sections, there are sort of tight corridor like you're sort of used to from the Dead Space series. So they didn't show any of that, and so I just wonder how well it's going to work when you have a partner there. What I am sort of intrigued by is how they incorporate the co-op into it. So apparently if you're only wanting to play single player, that co-op person is not there at all. You don't have an AI partner. He's just not in the story, or either he's not with you. He may still be in the story, but he isn't going to be with you as you're playing through. So you can still have that single person experience if you want to, and if you want to do co-op, a friend can drop in with you, and then Carver will be there, and it will change the way that the cutscenes and stuff and dialogue and whatnot plays out. So that's kind of interesting, and I'm wondering how if they're going to scale the difficulty for 2 players or what. So it's definitely one that I'm going to keep my eye on, because I do like that series a lot, and I thought that the second one was a really good sequel to the first Dead Space. That was just my opinion, but I really enjoyed it. And so I'm going to keep my eye on this. I am still a little skeptical of the co-op, but I do like the idea that if you do want to go through single player, you don't have an AI partner, and you can have that sort of signature survival horror Dead Space experience of being alone versus a lot of monsters. So there's that. And that was all from EA. They didn't announce any new properties. It seems like they were trying to play it safe a little bit here, and only announce things that were sort of already announced, expected sequels to things that are already established. And so there wasn't a whole lot that was exciting about that press conference to me, although I do think that they have some good games. I was more, I think, disappointed by the stuff that they didn't talk about, like, for example, Overstrike, which I haven't heard anything about at all. It was announced last year, and they had this trailer, and it looked hilarious, and like it had some potential for some good 4-player co-op, class-based game. And so I don't know where that went. It's still in production, according to the company. Insomniac Games is making it, and so according to their website, it's still being made, but nothing about it, so I was disappointed about that. Also, I would have loved to have heard some news on either or Dragon Age 3 or whatever they have planned for Mass Effect. It seems like they're really trying hard to get people invested in the Old Republic, because they put a lot of development money and time into that game, and it seems to be underperforming for them. And I would love to, instead of trying to draw an audience into this MMO that seems to be, have found its audience that's not as big as they had hoped, and just let it be that. And just focus on BioWare's other properties, because I'm far more interested in those. I would love to have seen at least something on Dragon Age 3 to see what they're going to do with that. So anyway, I was a little disappointed by EA. It was a little underwhelming overall. But I'm going to move on to something that was definitely not underwhelming, Ubisoft's press conference. I think it was an awesome press conference. I mean, I was even interested in games that I'm not normally attracted to. So, for example, Rayman Legends. I'm not sure if it's a Wii U only title, but it's a platformer. It's sort of, I guess, the sequel or another iteration of Rayman Origins that came out this past year, and the demo was great. I mean, the guys who were demoing it made it so that the jumps and everything were timed exactly with the music, and it looked cool. It looked like a fun platformer, so I thought that looked neat. They showed ZombiU, which I talked a lot about in my video about the Nintendo press conference. They just showed a short trailer to it at the Ubisoft conference, but it was enough to sort of tease you into being interested in what that game was going to be. And then when they showed more about it at the Nintendo press conference, it looked pretty cool and has an interesting concept of, you know, see how long you can survive, and once you die, you're dead, that character is dead, and you know, take the persona of a different character and have to start completely over, leveling them up, and see how long you can survive from there. So it sounds like an interesting concept. It sounds like one of the only games really that looked like it incorporates the Wii U hardware well, and so that was one that looked interesting. They also talked briefly about Splinter Cell Blacklist, which they talked about and I talked more about in my video about the Microsoft press conference. That's one that I'm super excited for. I was surprised that Microsoft did not really stress the fact that that is going to be a 360 exclusive, because Conviction was an exclusive for them, and from all that I've seen, Blacklist is also a 360 exclusive, and it sort of blows my mind a little bit that they didn't stress that more at Microsoft's press conference, but whatever. They're the ones marketing the thing. So, in any case, I'm super excited for the new Splinter Cell. I really enjoyed Conviction. I enjoy the series in general, and it looks to be a cool new sequel to that. So, and I'm excited that Grimm's back, because I like Grimm. Let's see. They talked about a couple of things that I don't really care about. Just Dance 4, not interested. They also did a lengthy thing about this free-to-play competitive game called Shoot Mania, where they had some pro gamers come out and play that, and it just looked not fun. And I mean, they said it was in a pre-alpha stage, and it's possible that they'll come back and do something with it, but it was as boring as the laser tag thing from a couple of years ago, so not really interested in that. They showed a good bit of FarCry 3, which included boobs and tigers, and so that's pretty cool, and lots of fire, which I love. The fire effects from Far Cry 2 were awesome, and they are making a return in full force in 3, which is great. I didn't see any syringes that you stab into your wrist, though, so I'm interested to see what the health system is like for that game, because I thought that was it was a really visceral way of getting your health back that they had in Far Cry 2. But I wouldn't be sad to see it go in 3, I guess, as long as, you know, there is a way for you to regain health. Whatever it is, it's not super important. But yeah, it looks like an interesting concept of insanity and whether your character is insane or how much you're like this boss guy who is clearly just nuts, and which makes him sinister. I mean, I think people who are insane but still well armed and intelligent and whatnot are some of the most dangerous and interesting kinds of enemies. So I'm thinking, you know, like BioShock, the original BioShock, some of the enemies there, and yeah, just someone who is batshit crazy is a formidable foe a lot of times. And so, like the Joker or something, someone who's nuts but is also pretty smart and resourceful. So it has a lot of sort of followers and people at his behest. But that game looked great. Another game that incorporated the bow and arrow, which is the big thing right now. They have it in so many games. They had it in Tomb Raider, they have it in Far Cry 3, they have a crossbow in Splinter Cell, they have bows and stuff in the game Dishonored that's coming out, and of course there are bows and arrows in Assassin's Creed 3. Just so many bows. But yeah, they had a sort of compound bow that you use for some stealth gameplay for Far Cry 3, which looked cool. And the tigers, man, the tigers were just awesome. So being able to sort of release a tiger from its cage and have it attack one of the enemies, but then, you know, if the tiger kills the enemies and you're the only one left, it's going to try to eat you. So, super interesting. So Far Cry 3 is looking good. They also demoed some 4-player co-op for the Sony press conference, and so the 4-player co-op is a completely separate game. It isn't drop-in, drop-out co-op for the single-player Far Cry game. That is its own thing. They decided to make a completely other co-op mode that you can do, so where you're going in with up to 4 people and taking down a bunch of guys and capturing territory and whatnot. So that looks fun, and just the entire game, it looks interesting, and their demo of it and the things that they've said about it at this E3 have sold me on it more, because I was on the fence about it a little bit, and now I'm leaning more toward playing that game when it comes out. So good on them for that. And then the big one of their conference, well, one of the 2 big ones, I guess, but the big one that we were expecting was Assassin's Creed 3, and it looks fantastic. I have to say, the Assassin's Creed series has gotten a little stale. I haven't even finished Revelations yet, just because, I mean, it just feels like the same old thing, even though they have introduced some gameplay mechanics that are different in that game than in previous titles. It just still feels it's more of the same old stuff, and you're ready for the story to move on. And I think that they are definitely succeeding from what I've seen of Assassin's Creed 3. I mean, you're with this new character, Connor. It's a completely new setting, and the American Revolution is territory that hasn't been explored that much with games. So I think that was a fantastic opportunity. I really like the gameplay that I've seen of it, especially in the Ubisoft press conference, where it's sort of going through the environment, both rural and urban settings. So when you're out in the woods and you're climbing through trees and cliff faces and you know, fighting wolves and things, some of the animals that can attack you, and trying to, you know, sneak up on camps and take out guys, just looks really cool. It looks different, it looks fresh, but it still looks like Assassin's Creed, and I think that really sells me on it, because I want it to be Assassin's Creed with those core mechanics that I like, but I want it to be better, and I want it to be fresh. I want it to be different, and to not feel like it's just rehashing the same old territory that we've been through. And so I'm interested to see how it furthers the story, and I'm really psyched to play it. They showed the naval warfare gameplay in Sony's press conference, and while that doesn't intrigue me as much, it still looked great. And it's nice to see that they're taking some risks to change up the different types of gameplay there, and to really take advantage of the setting that it takes place in. So, all in all, I'm super excited for that game. I cannot wait for it to come out, so it's looking good to me. And then they closed out their conference with a surprise. So something that had not leaked to the public, which is pretty impressive in and of itself, because pretty much everything else that I've seen at E3 I knew was going to be there. And I had heard about, and I at least knew a little something about what those things were, or I had heard of them. And so the fact that they could keep a title that they were going to show a secret, kudos to them. So it's this thing called Watch Dogs, and they showed a cool trailer sort of giving you some backstory, and it looks sort of like a very plausible future where all this technology is connected, you know, your cell phone to your bank account, to the street cameras, to your police record, you know, to your credit card receipts, and all of this sort of digital information that is compiled. And I think it's referred to currently as your digital footprint. And I think they refer to it in the game as your digital shadow that is being cast, and that with the connection of the very near future, what I think is something that's really plausible and is already happening to a degree, that, you know, with the right skills and with the right tech skills, someone could know all of this information about everyone around them, and be able to hack into all these different systems, and how that can really wreak havoc on people's lives. And so I think that it sounds like a good idea. It's something that I haven't really seen explored in games. So it's a fresh world that's going to be an open world for you to explore, or so they say. You know, an open world that you can go, and it looked like the main protagonist, who I don't remember his name, I think his last name maybe is Pierce, but he's going around and he's sort of hacking into people's cell phones and stuff, and he can look at their medical records. And so he like you look at this one person and you scan them and you see that they're an employee of this company, and you know, they make this much money, and you see the next person and you see that, you know, they have this disease, and, you know, this is their medical record, and I think that's really cool that you can sort of look at any NPC and find out little bits of information about them, and some things may help you further the story along, and some things might just be just kind of a nice touch of information, like something real that you can find out about a real person. That is kind of scary and sinister in a way, and also kind of neat thing to incorporate into a game. And so there's that aspect to it, of the hacking and the sort of finding information, and then there's also combat in this game. So you're it's not really clear who the enemies are. It looks like some sort of organization or company that is probably using this ability to hack in and get all this information on people in the wrong way, to control consumers, to control people, to control the market, or something to that degree. And I'm imagining a little bit more sinister purposes, to sort of control people's lives. And your character is trying to rebel against those people, to take them down. And so it showed this section of where you find where this person is, and then he's in this car, and you hack into the streetlights to, you know, cause them all to go green, and for there to be this huge car crash at this intersection, trapping the guy that you are going after. And then you have a gun, which is cool, and you also have this sort of like baton thing that you can extend and knock guys around. And so you take out his bodyguards, you can, you know, make cars blow up and move around, and it looked like slick gameplay, which, you know, reminds me of Assassin's Creed and Splinter Cell, sort of being able to move around the area and hop over cars and do things like that. So that looked good. The combat looked like it worked really well. And then it apparently is an open world, so you can drive the cars away. And it also hinted at this multiplayer aspect. So there was a moment in the demo where it sort of panned out from the main guy, and you saw that there were a bunch of different operatives all around the city that were going to be helping him. So I think that brings in a neat potential for there to be co-op and or multiplayer in the game that is a new and interesting type, where, you know, other people are sort of hacking things to help you, you're hacking things to help them, working together to take down this sort of evil corporation. So that sounds neat. Or maybe like rival corporations have hired different people to try to either help each other, work against the main character, or, you know, various factions. So that there's a lot of speculation at this point because, you know, we don't know a whole lot about the game. But apparently there's also this mobile app that's going to be, you know, for your phone or your touchpad, your phone or your pad, to be able to hack things and scan things, and maybe in your own, like out in the world too, the real world. So like, I don't know, like hacking other players who are like in close proximity to you and who are also have that application. I don't know, but it seems interesting and one to watch, and definitely the surprise probably of the entire E3. So that game looked really interesting and exciting, and apparently it's coming out sometime next year, so definitely going to keep my eye out for that. And so Ubisoft's press conference was probably the best of all of the press conferences. That's including Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. They just had a really strong showing. They had a lot of good games that demoed really well, and few lulls and low points. So kudos to Ubisoft. They had a good conference this year with a lot of cool things coming out. So those are my thoughts on those three. I did manage to get through them in one video, so I'm happy about that. And I'm probably going to do maybe a couple more on some games that were not shown as much within the conferences. So stay tuned to my channel for those, because I want to talk about Dishonored. I want to talk about the Elder Scrolls stuff that they brought, the Elder Scrolls Online and the Dawn Guard DLC that's coming out, because both of those look cool. I want to talk about Hitman, and maybe a little more about some of the other games that were just briefly touched on. Oh, and the new Star Wars game, Star Wars 1313, which looks cool. So I want to talk about all those things, but not in this video. So stay tuned to my channel. Let me know what you thought about all the stuff that you've been seeing at E3. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.